On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1961. We're going to be having a listen to Solomon Burke, and he's going to be performing Cry to Me. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So, as always, I have isolated the vocal, run it through the pitch monitoring software. But to begin with, we'll listen to this the whole way through because it's about 2.5 minutes in length. So, let's have a listen and see how Solomon gets on.
When your baby leaves you all alone and nobody calls you on the phone, don't you feel like a crying? Don't you feel like crying? Well, here I am, honey. Come on, you cry to me. When you're all alone in your lonely room and there's nothing but the smell of her perfume, don't you feel like a crying? Don't you feel like crying? Don't you feel like a cry? Come on, cry to me. Oh, nothing can be sadder than a glass of wine alone. Loneliness, such a waste of time. Oh yes, you don't ever have to walk alone. You see, come on, take my hand, baby, won't you walk with me? Oh yeah, when you're waiting for a voice to come in the night, but there's no one. Don't you feel like a cry? Cry to me. Don't you feel like crying? Cry to me. Don't you feel like a crying? Cry to me. Don't you feel like a
And there we have it, to fade out. I mean, what a voice we have there. And the thing about Solomon's voice was that he had the ability to belt in chest voice, way up there, the top end of the male tenor range. We've got A4s going on, but we've got the octave below that, and we're, pretty much spanning over 2 octaves here. And this is something that you'll get with great soul singers, or great R&B singers, and just talking about the R&B thing and the fact that Solomon, being a very religious man, he had to have an agreement with his record label that he'd be called a soul singer rather than an R&B artist or an R&B singer, because of the potential negative connotations with the church, or at least how they might see things, considering that for some people, especially back in the 40s, 50s and 60s, this was released actually in 1962, but the recording we're listening to is from the studio, of course, in 1961. So that's when this voice is being produced. But certainly back in those times, there seemed to be this view of music where, I mean, now we can look back at it and I don't really understand it, but looking back, and literally the difference between one note and another note will determine whether it's potentially evil or to do with the devil or something like that. And when I'm talking about a semitone, when you play your fifth, if you play a flat 5, so you take the 5th down one, you flatten that 5th, it means that now that was described as being the devil's music or something like that. It's just a particular sound that is going to sound discordant. It's not going to sound the way that it should do when you play your octave, your 5th, and you got your major 3rd below that, so you'd have those 3 notes together, and it'd be either major or minor. But then if you take that 5th down, then that's an absolute no-go area religiously. This is the point that when we're talking about the blues as well, having all of these connotations and things about selling your soul to the devil and doing things at the crossroads, all that kind of stuff. To me, music is just sound. It's got nothing negative at all, because it's just a sound. So once we start attributing beliefs to different sounds, then it's going to be a very complicated process. But of course, people can believe whatever they want to believe. So this is the problem that Solomon had. And just to put a bookend to that point, I think that a lot of singers around the time, especially those who were religious outside of music and were then well known in music for singing the blues, for example, they saw music as an opportunity to spread the word more, because you could reach people that you may not have been able to reach before. So it was definitely a force for good. I think music is always going to be a force for good. It's just how you picture that or how you want to pigeonhole it. I think that music can bring people together, which is what music is all about, and that can only be a good thing. But anyway, getting back into this analysis, the great thing about looking at voices from around this time, but just voices that haven't been tainted by technology, is that you can see on screen the expression as well as being able to hear it. So we can start to have these parallels between what we're hearing and what we're seeing, and why what we're hearing is so full of emotion and so full of expression. So going all the way back, and I'm going to take down the accompaniment so that we can hear Solomon's voice a little bit more clearly.
When your baby leaves you all alone.
I mean, great point to, take a look at here in between the E4 and the F4. But even with the accompaniment low down, you're not going to listen to this voice and think, oh, that was between notes, so it didn't sound right. And I mean, all of the instrumentation is tuned to 440 hertz standard tuning in the background. So everything that we see here that isn't on a line is because it's the human voice. The instruments in the background would be on these lines if we were able to hear them. We're just looking at the vocal here because that's what we want to focus on.
And nobody calls you on the phone. Or don't you feel like a crying? Don't you feel like crying?
And when we get up to here, the A4, we can actually see that we start the G sharp 4, but we have this ascension to the destination, to the A4. And again, that's just expression, the way the Solomon throws that in there. Have a listen to it again.
Don't you feel like...
So you can just hear the way that his voice ascends, but at no point do you think, oh, he's hit a G sharp 4 there, which is the wrong note. And he had this ability, as he shows in this song, to hit notes, high notes, such as an A4, in a sound like this, which has a little bit of compression to it, but he can also add rasp, and a lot of rasp, to his sound. So he's got that light and shade in his voice. There's no real distortion, vocal distortion, no rasp, so he's getting this na 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 na, a relatively clean sound to it, because we're at the beginning of the song. So this is the same range, the same notes that we're going to have at the end of the song when he starts really going for it. But it's just the way that he's delivering it that is ever so slightly different at the beginning of the song to then when we listen to the end of the song. But let's continue. Cry. And again there, that cry. You're going to a bit of a cleaner sound. Another thing that we have with great soul singers or R&B singers are these runs that can span an octave and sometimes over an octave, and it's just having, you know, a wealth of ability and so many notes that they've got at their disposal, where you'll get some singers who will be quite happy just to span an octave from the beginning of the song to the end of the song, but not really doing it in one vocal phrase. This is very much a soul R&B thing where you get these really cool runs happening all the time. And you know, we get a good example here with this tail off.
Don't you feel like crying?
Cry. Like that. It's once you finish the line, cry, you think that that's going to be the end. Cry. And there's another couple of notes on the end. So that's what I mean. And here, if we're going, na, we have a little bit of vibrato on that E4 just to get that note to sing. But we then have this little tail off. And of course, you know, I can't really do this kind of thing, but just to give a demonstration of the notes that are being hit within this run. So let's listen on.
Well, here I am, honey. Come on. You're crying me.
And I mean, the expression here on this C4, but also, you know, this B3, C4, C sharp 4, the noise is happening all in that space, but because it's an expressive noise, you're not really thinking about what the pitch is. And let's just get that last note in there again.
You're crying me.
So notes all the way down there. Which will be, you know, it's at the bottom of the screen here, so going to be in and around an E3. So, you know, quite a low note, considering that just at the beginning of this phrase we were all the way up, which you can't see at the top here, at the A4.
When you're all alone.
And again, he's just done exactly the same thing from, you know, all the way up here. I mean, pretty much across all of the notes that we've got here on the pitch monitoring software. And it's just over in a split second. Just so easily thrown together, these notes. And every time it happens, it's just expressive at the same time. It's not like he's going down a flight of stairs, going, and kind of doing it exactly. There's a flow, there's a slide, there's a blend of all of these notes, which you can see when this line is joined up with the other notes. It's just this smooth descension, and the pitch monitoring software doesn't always pick it up when it's just one held note. But have a listen again. That was all joined together. You know, so yeah, it's really cool to listen to. I don't want to break this down literally note by note, but when you're listening to a great voice, you just want to listen to everything.
In your lonely room.
I said I didn't want to analyse every note, but this, if we're talking about pitch correction, which we're not in this video, this kind of thing wouldn't happen. Because this note isn't nailed down. It could be the G3, it could be the G sharp 3, it could even, as we see it go higher, be the A3. It's just a kind of noise that happens in there just at the end of the line. But yeah, it's cool to hear a voice that's just natural and just has this freedom.
And there's nothing.
Hey, there we go. So now we're down at the A2 and that's all the way down there. So we've gone 2 octaves lower than where we were literally about 5 or 10 seconds ago.
But the smell of her perfume, don't you feel like a crying? Don't you feel like crying?
And listen to the way that Solomon is now leaning into it, belting in chest voice and getting this raspy sound to his voice. And when I say about belting in chest voice, he's not handing this off to head voice, even though earlier we did have a little bit of a more balanced sound, a more of a mixed voice sound, because it was nowhere near that raspy and that belty. So again, it's just a whole different side to his voice that he has.
Don't you feel like a cry?
And even here, with the E4, even though we're at a lower note, that he could sing na like that, he's now going ah, and kind of leaning into it and just putting more aggression into it. But that's where the expression is.
Come on, cry to me. Oh, nothing can be said than a glass of wine.
Yeah, this is what great singers do. As we go through all of that expression and being between notes and not really hitting one note particularly out of three, now he's locking into melody here with the F sharp 4. And listen to that vibrato as well.
Oh, nothing can be said.
And again, the A4, but now we're bang on pitch. And when I say great singers do this, they've got all of that expressiveness in their voice, but they will be ticking off pitches throughout a whole performance. So then by the end of the performance, the notes all make sense because you've got a relevance for the expression, because we know where the notes are because they are being hit, and we know where the expression is because we've got the accuracy of those other notes. Obviously, the instrumentation gives you that reference point, but this vocal accuracy just beds it in there so that you can relax and listen to this voice and not feel uneasy because you know that Solomon has got this. It's all under control. When he needs to belt out an A4, he will belt it out and hit it bang on the nose.
Then a glass of wine alone.
See, even there, that na na na, that was na, and coming down to the B3, and then going down a little bit lower, going down to that lower part of his voice.
Loneliness, such a waste of time. Oh yes, you don't ever have to walk alone. But you see, come on, take my hand, baby.
Great example there. Let's take that back, because look at the way here we're between the C sharp 4 and the D4. So technically that note that Solomon sang was as wrong as you can get, according to 440 hertz, equal temperament. And have a listen to it again. Come on. You can hear it slide. Actually, we'll hear it in slow motion because you can now start to appreciate what expression is. Because this isn't, oh come on, oh come on. He's not hitting notes here. He's just expressing. Have a listen. Come on. It's microtones. Microtones are basically between these lines. So you're hitting notes that aren't actually referenced as notes. They are the tones between notes. And depending on which kind of music you're listening to, whether it's Western music or not, or where that music originates, different countries have different tuning systems, and some use microtones, or at least what we would class as microtones, not being 440 hertz. So this is the kind of thing that you can get when the voice has got freedom to go where it wants to go and where the singer wants it to go.
In the night.
And listen to the clarity there. It's actually like listening to another voice and not Solomon's voice when you compare it with that raspy vocal at the A4. Have a listen to this.
In the night.
So now we have this in the night, and he goes down to a breathy sound, but that top G4 that he slides up, and again, we're starting a little bit flat and then we go sharp, but it's because of the expression. Listen to how clear this is.
In the night.
In the night. Actually, in the night. It's a little bit more like that. So the G sharp 4, he doesn't quite hit because he's keeping it a little bit bluesy with that, but the tone is so clean. So when I say clear earlier, what I mean is that vocal cord connection without the rasp, because the rasp we had before, I pointed it out, was at the E4 when he was leaning into his sound. Now we're at the G4, the G sharp 4, so we're significantly higher, but we're cleaner. So this is the point. He can hit high notes in a cleaner sound, he can hit high notes in a raspy sound, he can hit lower notes in a cleaner sound or a raspy sound, and he's got 2 octaves worth of range to do that with. So yeah, when you're talking about great singers, they can access so many notes range-wise, but they can sing each of those notes differently. It's almost like having lots of different effects for your vocal cords, just accessible all the time. So you want to stick some distortion on your sound, then a great vocalist can do that. But then if they want to have a clean tone at the top end of their range, they can do that as well.
Don't you feel like a cry? Cry to me. Don't you feel like crying? Cry to me.
I mean, listen to the power there. And on that A4, certainly from this recording and the isolated vocal, you get the impression that he's gone away from the microphone here, because you hear more of the room. It's not that just for that one particular word they added more reverb to the sound. It's just that he's taken a step back away from the microphone because of the power. If he was to do that close to the mic, then it would clip and you'd have to do the whole thing all over again. So he's just coming away from the microphone, and you can hear the volume and the power that he's singing with here.
Don't you feel like a cracker, 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 crying? Don't you feel like a cracker, cracker, cracker?
And then he just kind of continues to lean into that sound until the end. So I know that Solomon was one of those singers that maybe didn't get as much mainstream exposure as other singers, back in the day around this time in the early 60s. And he was somebody who put on a show live as well. And I know that certainly from what I read, people comparing him with James Brown and other artists at the time who had put on a show, and they said, he couldn't do that because he wasn't of the right size. He was a big guy as well, so it means that he wouldn't have been doing a lot of dancing. But his performances were referred to as almost being part of a service and being in the church, and that's certainly the impression that you get with great soul singers, R&B singers. There's a lot to be said for the church, the religious side of things, for getting singers together and for them to have this kind of ability where when a choir is singing, and maybe it's a choir isn't the right term for it, because certainly for me a choir brings up the image of choir boys and choir girls, and they're going, it's all that kind of sound. Whereas this is gospel singing. This is just emotion and expression and, belting and chest voice and all that kind of stuff. And it just hits you. Just great music is great music. And this certainly is an example of it. But thank you guys for requesting Solomon to take a look at tonight. And keep those suggestions and requests coming in the comments section below. Let me know what you guys think. And if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys at the next one. Rock!